there's been a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. There's been certain guys that have been disappointing this season on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay. Lepore, who has been the most disappointing Leaf through the first 16 games? Now, it's funny I'm bringing this up because, like I said, they're the hottest team in the league. Things are trending in the right direction, but there's still things that, there's still players and certain things we want to see this team get better at. So, Lepore, who has been the most disappointing Leaf through the first 16 games, in your opinion?
Yeah, like you said, we're kind of spoiled right now with picking who's been the most disappointing Leaf with the start they've had. I often tell people, like, people look at the standings all the time, like early in the season, like the standings are irrelevant. Like, not enough games have been played. Teams have played different amounts of games. Teams have played different teams. But what I always try to focus on is the Leafs point pace, because you see those numbers, like historically, usually the number to get in the playoffs is like in the mid 90s, like random years it's lower. And then home ice advantage, say like upwards, say 100 points. And right now the Leafs, I think their pace is like 107 points. Now that's not me predicting that they're going to finish with 107 points, but it's what they are right now. So you can't really complain unless you're Anthony Bruno and you want to bring up a question. Who has been the most disappointing Leaf so far?
Has to be done, Lepore.
Yeah, I think for me, it's an easy one, man. I'm going to go Peter Mrazek.
Okay.
And I mean, I think I know where you're going to go, but at least Mrazek's not even playing. And we not only did we sign this guy for a decent amount of dough, we gave him term. So here you have Mrazek, who played half a game, gets hurt. He's earning his $3.8 million. And as the media loves to do, they love to create heat around the Toronto Maple Leafs to get their fans on edge. That boardroom, I'd love to be a fly in the wall in that boardroom with those discussions of what they're going to do next year, because Jack Campbell, who is having an unbelievable start to the season, is an unrestricted free agent. And Mrazek has 2 years left after this one at $3.8 million. So it's going to be kind of tough to keep both of them. And for that matter, I don't think the Leafs, if they commit to Campbell, would want to keep both of them. But I'm going to go with Mrazek just because of, his lack of playing, the money he makes, and how acquiring him right now could very well screw the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward with their goaltending situation.
That's totally fair, Lepore. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. When you're paying a guy $3.8 million over 3 years, and he's played essentially 1.5 games this season, that's a disaster. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Thank God Jack Campbell has been playing this well, because if Jack Campbell, let's say last year was, a 1-year wonder for Campbell. And I know I'll get into some stats later in the show. He's now played almost 100 games in the NHL and has a .920 save percentage. But let's say last year was just like, okay, it's a mirage. Jack Campbell, just caught lightning in a bottle. And if he came into this season not playing that well, and you have Mrazek injured, this would be a nightmare.
Oh God.
It would be an absolute nightmare. So it's very, very hard to disagree with you on that. But Lepore, I'm going to go with the more obvious choice. It's Nick Ritchie for me. I think he's easily been the most disappointing Leaf. He has not scored a goal yet this season. 0 goals, 2 assists in 16 games. He has just 24 shots on goal. Last season with the Boston Bruins, Nick Ritchie had 15 goals in 56 games. It was sort of a breakout season for him, and you can laugh if you want, thinking that 15 goals in 56 games is a breakout season, but he scored it at 22-goal pace over 82 games. And he brings physicality. You figure it's the perfect guy to insert on this Leafs team, which a lot of people around the league and fans in general, they still think the Leafs are kind of soft. That's just, a narrative that this team really can't shake, even though you could say things and show things to, dispel that narrative. It's still there. So you think bringing in Nick Ritchie, perfect. He's got the pedigree. He was a first-round pick, had a career year last season with Boston, but he has just been brutal this season. Now, I will say, kind of like we alluded to, Lepore, he has been showing some flashes over the last little while. He's been getting some more scoring chances. He set up Nylander for that power play goal against Philadelphia, that nice backhand feed.
Yeah.
So he's been having some moments and he's finding his game a little bit, but this is a guy that you're paying $2.5 million to over 2 years. He's making the most money of all those depth signings, all those guys that Dubas, picked up off the scrap heap or whatever you want to call it. He's the highest paid guy, and they expected him to be a fixture in the top 6. And I know now he's getting an opportunity to play up the lineup again, but they had to demote this guy to the 4th line at one point, and it just hasn't been a good start for him. And I'm sure it's weighing on him. He still hasn't scored a goal in 16 games. It's just unacceptable. He's got to find a way to start contributing more. And, it's nice to see him make some plays and have some scoring chances, but you got to see it on the score sheet when you're paying this guy $2.5 million. So for me, it's definitely Nick Ritchie.
Yeah. Is it, you think of like between those two guys, funny, I touched on earlier in the show about how, the Leafs would love more cap space. That's what you have 3.8 and 2.5. So quick math, $6.3 million essentially on nothing. But you could replace with $1 million backup goalie and $1 million depth guy. So not cool. Like imagine the Leafs had an extra three and change million of cap space right now. Like we'd be floating. So again, with both those guys, really, like if this keeps going, it'll be interesting to see how the Leafs approach this at the deadline. Because if they can dump those, and I know it's early on, especially with the Mrazek one, like he's got a term after this, he's got 2 more years after this. But if they can find a way to blast those deals into the sun, and even if they got to give up a late pick or something or some sort of asset to get rid of them, to strengthen their team in the way of like it'll free up cap space or something comes back the other way within that deal. I don't know, because the Leafs had a great start to the season. And it's one of those things where you want to get to that next level and you need a lot to go right. And you need as much depth as possible. So those conversations are had, like Ritchie and Mrazek, like those have both come up because at the end of the day, right now, they're 100% wasted money. And the Leafs, like a lot of teams in the NHL who are competing for the Stanley Cup, you can't have that. You can't have dead money. I always say like bad contracts kill you because at the end of the day, I mean, there's bad contracts all over the league or guys being overpaid, underpaid. But okay, if the cap's 82 million, if you have 10 million in bad spent money, well, now your cap's 72 million. And it goes flat across the board for all teams and every team's on the same playing field. So when you have a team like the Leafs, as good as they have looked, have that much wasted money at the moment, it sucks and it hurts. And as always in Leafland, I think it could get pretty dramatic because Dubas knows even himself, we talked about on this show, like how many more kicks of the can is he going to get? So I'm sure he's trying to galaxy brain some stuff with regard to those two guys and what he can do. But as for Mrazek, like the Mrazek one's loaded too, because I mean, to let him go or like figure something, like, I mean, they have to sign Campbell. Like one kind of goes with the other.
If they don't re-sign Jack Campbell to a, I'm not saying they got to sign the guy to a 7-year or an 8-year deal, but if they don't give this guy at least a 4 to 5 year deal based on the way he's been playing, I'll be extremely disappointed. And you're going to have to give him more than you're giving Peter Mrazek.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League over the last 2 seasons, Jack Campbell. So you have to come in at least the floor is $4 million at this point, since you're paying Campbell paying Mrazek 3.8. So it's not a good situation right now. Like you said, Lepore, when you have over $6 million of your cap doing nothing at all, nothing.
Yeah. I'll ask you this, Bruno, and we can go on forever about this one. Who, like Dubas hits the phones, who's harder to move right now, Mrazek or Ritchie? Or let's say it's trade deadline and Mrazek comes back and he's like fine, like even average goaltending. Like who's harder to move?
I think Mrazek is harder to move. And this is an old cliche in sports. They say the greatest ability is availability. And Peter Mrazek, not just this season, even going back to last season, he only played 12 games last season for the Carolina Hurricanes, dealing with an injury. And you could even go back to, some of his earlier seasons, this guy has dealt with injuries throughout his career. And I'm not saying he's like, a sheet of glass and he's, Rick DiPietro and, he's never going to play again or anything like that. But I mean, come on, this guy has got to find a way to stay healthy. And maybe they rushed him back a little bit with the groin injury. I don't think the Leafs rushed him back, but who knows? Maybe Peter Mrazek felt the pressure to come back. He didn't want to put everything on Jack Campbell, who's essentially kind of had to put this team on his back for stretches of this season. So I think it's the Mrazek deal that's going to be harder to move. Even if Nick Ritchie, like even at the deadline, if he only has like, let's say 7 or 8 goals, I still think it's going to be harder to move a goalie making $3.8 million and still has 2 years after this left on his contract.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. I definitely do.
Yeah. So Kyle Dubas, he's got his work cut out for him for sure. Lepore,
he's got to fix his mistakes.
Yeah, because these are definitely mistakes. And don't let Kyle Dubas fool you if he comes and has a media availability saying, he still believes in Mrazek and Nick Ritchie. No, these were bad.
No,
signings.
you don't. No, you don't.
You don't believe in them. These were mistakes. I'd actually like to see him own it at some point. And who knows, maybe these guys are going to completely turn it around and prove us wrong. But right now it's looking like two big mistakes from Kyle Dubas.
Yeah.